Today on
Doomed!
the Bolivia coup gaslighting was real, folks. It was real. On today's episode of Doomed with Matt Binder, we will dive into the investigation that uncovered a coordinated bot campaign that aided in the Bolivia coup by insisting it was not a coup. Folks, there's a swerve in who's behind this plot that you won't want to miss. And joining me to break it all down, Salon politics writer Igor Derysh. And he will join me in just a second. But before that, patreon.com/MattBinder. Support the show, doomedpod.com to subscribe on iTunes and Google Play and wherever else you listen to your podcasts. And on YouTube at youtube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe there if you aren't already. And now, let me pull my guest Igor up on the feed so you can see us. La, la, la. Here we go. And there we go. Igor Derysh of Salon. Thank you
Hello.
so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. I'm really excited to talk about this because as I was telling you beforehand, when I was covering the Bolivia coup that deposed of President Morales back in November, it was like a stream of comments whenever you would just mention the words Bolivia and coup in the same sentence online that basically was insisting that it was not a coup. But before we get into that, for people who maybe weren't listening to this show back in November or just weren't really following what was going on in Bolivia, can you give us a quick sort of summary or breakdown? It doesn't necessarily have to be quick, but just a summary or breakdown of what happened to begin with.
Sure. I mean, I was just saying before the show, like, this is the perfect week to talk about it because of the vote counting issue. So basically what happened is Evo Morales was behind in the polls, or he was not going to reach the threshold, and there was a delay in the quick count in Bolivia at something like 84%. And then when it came back, he had passed the threshold that he needed to win on the first round. So this happens from what I read. I mean, I'm not a Bolivia expert. I just pursued this story out of my own curiosity because American media has just not covered this at all. So from what I found, just out of research, is this is pretty standard practice. You count until you realize, until you find who won the vote, and then you report the final votes. So when the final votes were reported, he had passed the threshold, and this set off a firestorm. The OAS, the Organization of American States, which is this election monitor body based in the U.S., funded mostly by the U.S., released this concerned statement that they're alarmed about what's going on, what's up with this quick count, even though, again, this seems pretty standard and routine. Researchers, there was a great article here in The Guardian, research from University of Cambridge, University of Texas, University of Mexico, all over, found all the same trends. They were basically followed the same trajectory as the results were going. So there was no sudden spike in the count, but because of the delay, because of this U.S.-backed sort of concern, there was protest. And the protests grew violent. They were led by this guy, Luis Fernando Camacho, he's this far-right millionaire. He's connected to some really terrible groups, some Christian fascist paramilitary groups, and they got violent. They began setting fires to members of Morales' party, and the military urged Morales to resign, which he did because that's what you do when the military urges you to resign. And after that happened, Janine Áñez, who was the second vice president, sort of declared herself the president. She issued an order that basically allowed security forces to shoot protesters, which they did. 30 people have been killed since Morales' resignation. And as this is happening, like you said, there's all these thousands of new Twitter accounts that pop up, and they're all tweeting the same thing verbatim in English: "Friends from everywhere. In Bolivia, there's no coup," which is totally normal for thousands of Bolivians to say verbatim at the same time. So it's
Right.
unclear how many are fake. I mean, obviously, I'm sure thousands of Bolivians may have signed up for Twitter. There was a lot of action happening in Bolivia around that time. There's this group, this organization, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights. They researched, they observed some of the, I guess they investigated it. They found 68,000 accounts were created just in like the 8 days surrounding the coup, and there's 250,000 accounts total that shared. There's these 14 hashtags. There's things like Morales is a fraud, and things like that.
Right.
So there was a total of 1 million tweets that shared these hashtags during that time. This was not really covered in American media. Spanish media covered this. I noted there was an El Diario report that I cited in my article that discussed how common it is for dirty war operations like this to happen in Latin America.
Right.
And sorry.
Before we get into the bots and this coordinated campaign basically to spread misinformation and propaganda, I just want to really stress that when this happened, if you were, and I was someone who experienced this, if you were tweeting about the coup in Bolivia, which it was a coup, these bots would come out and forcefully, just like you said, repeat the same thing verbatim, and it was almost like it was one of the more interesting moments of gaslighting I've ever seen online. Because, when let's say you go online and you talk about whatever you're talking about that, someone on the right will disagree with or whatever. They'll have some people who, you could tell it's not coordinated, and they're real people because they'll reply and they'll be like, they'll say something and they'll maybe call you an asshole or call you some other words, and they'll insist whatever they're pushing that's not in line with what you believe. But it was like the second you would say something, it was boom, 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 boom. All these counts in a row, all with just a few followers each, all set up literally that month or maybe the month before max. And it was just like copy and paste the same thing. It was like there was no personality to it. There was no like, oh, I can tell there's an angry person behind this. It was like, I don't know, like if the Stepford wives were all sitting at a computer and just writing to you en masse on Twitter. It was bizarre. And it was like, it was so many of them that it really was like, and the weird thing is, and I guess, maybe, like you said, maybe a lot of people in Bolivia don't really use Twitter until this happened. There really was no pushback on the other side. No. There wasn't like a campaign of pro-Morales people online using the internet to try to massage the media in their direction. There was none of that. So it was almost so that the gaslighting campaign to convince you that this was not a far-right coup in Bolivia, and you were the one that was crazy for saying so, really worked. I mean, I don't mean it worked on me in a way that I believed it wasn't a coup, but it made me think like, man, do the people of Bolivia, part of me was like, do the people of Bolivia really support this? Because I'm not seeing anything on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the research I looked like, there was a researcher in Spain, I was just looking up his name, Julian Macias Tovar. He found that like 48,000 of these accounts were just created in 4 days. And another researcher found that there was, like you said, no similar sort of coordinated or any kind of effort on the left, especially at this time, because Morales and many of his party members and their families had to flee the country because of the violence. So, but one of the other things that Tovar discovered was that there was a single account that contributed about 13,000 retweets to these hashtags, and he was able to post as many as 69, retweet as many as 69 posts in a single second. And he just happens to be this U.S. Army veteran that lives thousands of miles away in Austin, Texas.
Oh, that's the swerve. That's what I let everyone know. That's the swerve. That's the M. Night Shyamalan swerve at the beginning of the, I mentioned at the beginning of the show in the intro. Who would have thought that, I know this is not proof of official U.S., but we do know in other ways. I'm talking about specifically this coordinated online bot campaign. We don't know, I believe we don't know, if there's no proof that this is a U.S. Government coordinated thing.
No, but right. I mean, the general effort is U.S. backed.
Right, the general effort definitely. We've I was telling you before the show started. Actually, we'll get into this guy in a second. How in November I had Janice Vidaza on the show. And she was one of the more prominent voices online supporting the opposition, who I guess I can confirm isn't a bot because she was on the show. She's a founder of Standing Rivers, which is an organization in Bolivia that is not a fan of Morales. And she wanted him to step down. According to her, she agrees with a lot of Morales' positions. She considers herself to be on the left, even though if you listen to that hours-long debate I had with her, I would say that's suspect that she is on the left. But I spoke with her. We had a debate, and she claimed that she likes Morales' positions, but she didn't want him to have a third term, and she cheered Janine, her name is Janice Daza. She cheered Janine Áñez becoming president because, according to her, she was happy to see a woman president, which this is not the way. And she believed Áñez when she said that she was only going to do this, become the interim president, to make sure legitimate elections are held, and she won't be running. Now, Igor, can you tell us what we've learned in the past few weeks about what Janina Áñez is planning to do in Bolivia? Spoiler, everybody.
Could you repeat that? I broke up a little bit.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, wait, what's that? Okay, we lost some internet connection for a second, but it's all right. We're still running. Can you tell us, Igor, what we recently learned about what Janine Áñez, the interim president of Bolivia, plans to do in the upcoming elections?
I believe she plans to run, sir.
Exactly. Thank you. So we're learning that everything that was pushed about the Bolivia coup pretty much appears to be not true. And the people who thought it was a coup, which it was correct because it is a coup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we step back a bit, I mean, Morales is an interesting figure. I mean, he's obviously socialist economically, but, by all objective measures, he helped the country a lot economically, especially when it came to indigenous rights. He was a big champion of supporting the indigenous people who live out in the rural areas. And he was also a big supporter of creating a secular government and moving sort of this Christian fundamentalism out. So, you could see how conservatives, the way we see them here in the U.S., would not like him, and how they could get support here from America.
Right. So let's get into this guy, this U.S. Army vet who created this bot army of his own.
Well, no, I should clarify. He didn't create the army. He participated in it. So what he created is an algorithm. It's, as he describes it, it's 25 lines of code. He says any sort of coding student can do it. And so basically he created this short algorithm, and from thousands of miles away, he was able to boost a bunch of these thousands of accounts, many of them are fake, and amplify these hashtags while they were relevant.
So before we talk more about this guy, I actually want to get into this, because I guess I came into this, misread. Who is behind these bots?
Well, that remains unclear. We see some of the people linked to it. There's obviously, you mentioned before the show, the Human Rights Campaign, and obviously there was. I mentioned in my article that there were recordings of some of the opposition leaders that discussed. I don't know if they actually discussed, but they discussed among themselves, talking to Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Bob Menendez, and other U.S. politicians.
Right. So that's really interesting, because now there's a story here that I hope you continue to look into, this guy. So tell me more about what we know about this, I guess, the one person we can identify who is involved in this bot campaign.
Yeah, so he's a 39-year-old Army vet. He served in the Army for 6 years, served a little under a year in Afghanistan. But he's just, he's a vehicle mechanic. He now works for an automotive company in Austin, Texas, and from what I understand, he's a freelance stack developer and does some other things like coding. He's on Facebook openly bragging about this, which, I gotta say, I kind of respect the transparency. He posted, he shared a lot of the research that I cited. He joked that it made him out to seem like he's Cyber Rambo. But, he played a large part in this, and he says that he managed not to violate Twitter rules. Twitter has a cap of something like 3,000 retweets you can do a day, so he programmed it to not violate that. When I reached out to Twitter, they just gave me like a generic response, but his account has never been suspended. This is all perfectly legal, and anyone can do this from home. Anyone can jump into a coup effort and, spread this information.
Now, this guy, what do we know about his? I mean, obviously, he's a right winger. What do we know about his involvement, if any, in politics here? Like, if this guy is, again, it seems like he did something pretty simple in terms of the technology behind it. But if this guy is going out of his way to help with the coup in Bolivia, do we know about any coordinated efforts that he's involved with here?
Yeah, so I mean, I try to look into that, and really, he's just a freelance coder. Like, he just made this as, I guess, a hobby. He says he did it because he was upset that there were paid leftist propaganda smear merchants that were funded by narco trafficking money, which, there's no evidence of this. So he said that he did it in response to it. Whether he's involved in a coordinated effort beyond, my reach, I don't know.
Now, has there been a response from the left in Bolivia about this? Like, have you heard, or supporters of, because I'm sure there are outside groups who are supporting Morales still, obviously. Have we heard any response from them about what you uncovered?
No, I haven't heard anything. This was all based on stuff that was sent over by a Bolivian woman who reached out to Salon with a lot of this research. None of this was really mentioned anywhere in U.S. media. The U.S. media basically took the OAS statement and regurgitated it a bunch of times and added Trump's, praise for the resignation of Morales. The left, the Spanish media and Spanish researchers have been tracking this for months. So this has been going around Bolivia for months. It just hasn't been picked up here.
Now, these accounts, is there anything is there any obvious? Is there any sort of what are some of the attributes, I should say, of these accounts that are being used? Like, how can we, other than what they say, but how can you be sure that these are the accounts that are part of the bots, this bot campaign? Like, do these accounts all use a specific sort of theme of pictures, sort of a string of usernames that are similar? What are some of these attributes that we can basically look at and say, okay, this is definitely being used in a misinformation campaign?
That's a bit beyond my pay level. The way that that the researchers here were able to identify his patterns were that he was literally tweeting as many as like 69 posts in a single second, which is really hard for someone not automated to do.
Right. So, this is interesting to me because as we approach, obviously, our elections here, I mean, here we have just a single individual doing this. I mean, we've seen it in 2016 and after, these sort of campaigns being used to spread basically this, whether it's fake news or disinformation or basically just trying to gaslight people to make them believe what they know is true to be false. We've seen that here already, but I think to me the audacity about this one specifically is, like I mentioned before, the level of gaslighting when there was no pushback from the other side. But also I think it's just the idea that this one reactionary right-winger from the U.S. can just jump into, and this is the part that's most fascinating to me. I'm dying to know who he's assisting here. Is it... Because
honestly, like from reading way too much of his social media, he really, I mean, he's a hardcore Trump guy. Most of his Twitter feed is like, and he did an NRA fundraiser for his birthday. He posts a lot of army memes, and he posts a bunch of violent things that he blames on Evo Morales and his people. This guy does strike me as a true believer.
Oh, so you think this is just some guy who's doing this because this is where he stands? Like, he's not.
I'm sure. I'm not saying he's not ruling out that he may be part of a larger effort, but I do believe that he views Evo Morales as like this narco trafficking monster.
Right, but what I guess I'm saying is that, like, you told me how, like, he didn't create these bots. Like, he's basically just helping a larger campaign.
Yeah.
So I'm dying to know actually what is behind these bots, because do we even know that these bots were created by the opposition in Bolivia. Like this could be, you mentioned how he's working with this bot effort from thousands of miles away, and I mean that is true, obviously, because these bots are meant to affect the outcome of an election in Bolivia, which is not in America. But I wonder if who he's coordinating with is also thousands of miles away, or if they're just maybe a couple dozen miles away. That's the question.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really what made me interested in this, is just that just participated in the overthrow of a government without ever leaving his living room.
Now let's actually because we're talking here about this whole thing started because of election results that basically halted, and they didn't come out. There was a pause in these election results being reported in Bolivia, and I can't help but think that the United States said that this was suspect, and this is why there must have been some sort of cheating or election fraud going on to benefit Morales. And, it's impossible to do this episode on, here we are, February 6th, 2020, and ignore the
fact... Day 4 of a 2-hour caucus.
Day 4 of a 2-hour caucus in Iowa for the Democratic Party, where the election results were literally halted, and then were slowly dripped out over the past few days. First, it was something like 50%, and then 60-something%, and then 71%, and then 75%. And then they made an
error and they had to change it.
Right. Can't forget that. And then we got to 97%. Here we go. And then all of a sudden, the DNC chair, Tom Perez, comes out and goes, "Hold the phone. We're starting all over again." And I know you wrote something about all the errors here. And I just, this is, I did want to have you on to talk about this Bolivia report that really, again, only you've covered this bot campaign, which when this was happening, everyone who I know on the left in the U.S. who was interested in this were pointing these accounts out as like, what the hell's going on here? And the fact that like no one seems to have really looked into this any further until now is crazy to me. So I really appreciate you doing that. But it's impossible to, I think, continue this conversation without also talking about this recent article you wrote, basically breaking down how our Iowa Democratic primaries, the first in the nation, broke down here. Can you just quickly, I guess, why do I keep saying quickly? We have all the time in the world on this show. It's my show. Can you run down what happened in Iowa now that there's been reports about all these other errors, and why basically Tom Perez is calling for a recanvass?
Recanvass.
Which, I mean, in a primary election, I understand what a recanvass means because you have paper votes. Where people will go into a booth and, but when he said a recanvass, honestly, I know this is not what he meant, but the first thing that popped in my mind was like, this guy expecting everyone to forcibly get everyone to go back to their caucus site and vote exactly how they voted that night. Like, what's going on here?
That would be a fitting next step.
Don't want to give them any ideas. They might just do it.
We thought it was crazy on Monday, but it was crazier yesterday because as the results were coming out after the Democrats, quote, did quality control checks on the votes, they had to issue a correction to the results. In some cases, in Des Moines, there were votes that were for Bernie that went to Deval Patrick, which is completely implausible. There were votes for Elizabeth Warren that went for Tom Steyer, and they were able to fix some of those mistakes. But the New York Times, the Upshot guys, they analyzed a lot of these results, and they found that in over 100 precincts, there were errors. And in some cases, there were results that were just mathematically impossible. So in some cases, they were allocating more delegates, more state delegate equivalents to a candidate that was behind than the candidate who was ahead of them. In some, they were just giving out more delegates than they even had in that precinct. And then as this all is happening and, the Upshot needle, that awful, awful needle is predicting that Buttigieg is going to win like 99%. all of a sudden these satellite caucuses that Sanders people helped organize all around the country and even like overseas and just in college campuses in Iowa for registered Iowa voters, they start coming in. They're like heavily pro Bernie. So he was able to close the gap like to like 0.1% today. And exactly like you said, Tom Paris comes out and says, yeah, we should recount all this.
You know, it's amazing to me that, you know, when these bots come in and tell everyone that the Bolivia coup is not a coup, and then you have all these, and I want to really stress here because I don't think I stressed it enough when I first brought it up. This was not just like the belief was in the U.S. from the media and everything that this was a coup and these bots were just trying to change our minds. No, this was literally like the media here was not reporting it as a coup. Like they were specifically going out of their way to use any word but a coup, even though, again, this was the definition of a right-wing coup. The military called for this guy to step down. Right-wing fundamentalists in that country took over. Literally, that guy you brought up, Camacho, he was part of, like, when we say far right, I'm not talking about like, you know, I don't know, like even like a Ted Cruz here. Although I guess we could if you really wanted to go into it, being that, you know, if you're okay with what's going on, then you're probably, but you know, you're basic Republican. Let's put it that way. I mean, literally, this Camacho guy was the guy leading groups. There's videos out there of these groups like hailing and doing all sorts of like literal Nazi things. Like this is a literal fascist organization that Camacho was running, and this guy helps this coup happen, and we have this now far right president of Bolivia who basically the first thing she did when she got in there was bring in a giant Bible and pronounce that God is now back in the presidential palace. It's stunning to me that here we have the media in that scenario saying, oh, it's not a coup, when we now know it's a coup. And there were these bots and coordinated misinformation campaigns to try to convince us. And then in any stretch, you know, in any stretch of the imagination, you know, that would be something that you would label a conspiracy. The very smart people, I should say, the very serious pundits would label a conspiracy if it was the same thing going on in Iowa. Like, we have the left here seeing this Iowa results and going, hey, something really fishy is going on with this. And that's being labeled like, oh, these guys are conspiratorial. But when the Bolivia thing happened, it was the complete opposite. It's like we're living literally in bizarro world.
Yeah, it was literally the basis to overthrow a government.
Right. So, you know, it's the idea that we are, you know, it's crazy times, honestly. Because and here's another thing that I want to bring up, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit too. Let me actually ask you this. I'll pose this as a question first of all. Was Russia involved in this online disinformation campaign, Igor?
I haven't seen evidence that Russia was involved.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Did you find any WikiLeaks involvement?
No Assange here.
I mean, again, if you had found a Russian disinformation... let me ask you another question. Was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard anywhere around this?
I don't believe they were involved.
No? Okay. Just making sure. The Chinese? Any China involvement here?
I haven't seen it.
I really appreciate you answering these in the most serious manner possible. It's because you know what you know what I'm getting at. If you uncovered an operation that was being run by China or Russia or, you know, and when I say run by China or Russia, let me also say if you found an operation that was just run by somebody in Russia where we don't have any proof of direct government involvement, it's just some Russian hacker or Russian programmer running this. This would have been a story that every political blog, political news website, tech website, you would have seen this in The Verge, you would have seen Axios cover this, the New York Times, Washington Post. This would have been a story that would have been picked up everywhere. And
I will give The Verge credit. They did do one article that I saw on it.
Ah, they did. Well, then credit to The Verge. I didn't mean to throw The Verge under the bus there, but it's something that you would see get picked up by all these different places, and it's baffling to me that what a right wing reactionary who was a U.S. military vet working on a coordinated effort for some shadowy misinformation campaign who we don't actually know who's running. Basically creating the entire discourse online about Bolivia doesn't get any sort of attention.
Yeah, no, like I said, when I was trying to research it, I had to rely almost entirely on Spanish language media. Everything here was just a regurgitation of the OAS line. And I'm really surprised that more organizations didn't try to pursue it after they saw what was happening. Like you said, the whole Bible thing, there's a huge wave of Christian fundamentalists. There's the whole big lithium thing that a bunch of corporations want to get their hands on because Bolivia's sitting on a ton of lithium. There's a, there's a lot of reasons that people from outside of Bolivia want to get involved in Bolivia. And, it's all the more suspicious when you consider who's in charge of U.S. foreign policy in South America here, Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence.
Right. So you had mentioned, and also in your piece you had mentioned about the Spanish language reporters and the people who are looking into this data. What is the media over there? Well, first of all, when you say Spanish language, are these organizations and outlets in Bolivia, or are these other based out of other Latin America countries, or even, I guess, just Spanish-speaking countries around the world?
Yeah, so El Diario did a lot of stuff on this. They're based in Spain. He gave an interview to Carrero del Sur, which is based in Bolivia. And there was some other Argentinian outlets. There were other outlets who were involved in this. Spanish language media is very interested in what's going on. It's a really fascinating story, and there's so many questions still to be answered, but it just doesn't appear there's nearly enough people trying to dig into this.
Now, what is the coverage over there like for all this stuff? I assume, being that you worked with the people involved in reporting it there, for your report, how is their coverage going? Like, outside of the U.S. in these Spanish-speaking countries, is this affecting how people view what happened to Morales and who's currently in charge in Bolivia?
Yeah, I think it definitely affects a good sizable portion of people. I've definitely seen a lot of reactions on Twitter and online. But it's very cautious, because there's still so many questions left to be answered. It's hard to really pinpoint. It's hard to really blame any specific group or person. So there's a lot of suspicion, a lot of skepticism of the official government line, both in Bolivia and overseas. But it's really hard right now, because so few people are digging into this, to really get to the bottom of it.
Let me ask you this: Is the coordinated campaign that I've seen is obviously all in English because they were targeting someone who they believe is living in the U.S. Obviously, was there also an involved campaign for the people who are in these majority Spanish-speaking countries?
Well, I mean, the tweets were in Spanish, so.
Right. No, but I'm talking about, were these separate campaigns, or was this guy involved with both?
From what I understand, the research mostly focused on the hashtags, which were spread just as a general anti-Evo thing, not just in Bolivia, but in Spanish language countries with conservatives also.
Got it. So this is, another thing basically is that, and we didn't even, you mentioned it earlier, and we sort of just that we kept, because we were involved in figuring out who was behind this bot campaign and learning more about, what is this Army vet's name again?
Luis Suarez, like the soccer player.
Right. Oh man, and this is where he decided to go instead of using that name for, if you're gonna run an online scam operation. He could easily have used that name to somehow impersonate the soccer player and probably found a more lucrative grift. But I guess, you go with what you believe in. So so we wanted to get to that stuff, and we sort of just passed by this, but I want to get back to this. Twitter's response to you is really incredible. especially after this company has come out and really pushed that they were not going to pull a Facebook, and they were going to be much more on top of misinformation and basically getting involved and stopping coordinated efforts to mislead users, especially when it comes to an election. But when it comes to this, a foreign country's politics, it seems like their response to you is basically, we're not going to apply the political terms of service, our politics terms of service to this. This, our overall terms of service, this completely non-authentic, non-organic use of our platform, we're going to say it's just, if not okay, at the very least, we're hands off here.
Yeah, well, this is something he brags about. He brags about that he's gone through all the Twitter terms and conditions and made sure that his algorithm meets all the terms of service, and that's how he's been able to avoid getting shut down. But it is really questionable that a person can retweet thousands of posts a day, sometimes dozens of them in a single second, and that Twitter is just okay with that.
Are you aware of whether Suarez has tried or is planning to, because maybe he's been bragging about his next project, to branch out outside of Twitter? Because, Twitter is a great place for these sorts of efforts because there's a very large media contingent on Twitter, very large political discourse on Twitter. Like, these are niches and topics and industries and markets that make up a major portion of the user base on Twitter. But, like I just brought up Facebook, YouTube, there's, Facebook, a lot more, older audience who's more susceptible to these sorts of gaslighting and misinformation and fake news campaigns. YouTube, you could easily just create content, and this content gets recommended, and viewers get sucked into the rabbit hole of constantly just consuming this sort of information that may not be true, but obviously it works in terms of warping their mind into believing it. Are you aware of whether this person is planning to broaden his the online platforms he's spreading propaganda on?
Yeah, so he's a little different than the propagandist, right? He's found a way to sort of game the algorithm and boost the people that are making propaganda to much wider audiences. So, and I think that the reason that he picked Twitter was because it was so easy to game their system. And again, I have no reason to believe it was not anything other than 25 lines of code. And I think that's the reason that he targeted Twitter. Is so easy to do. And also, that's where a lot of this was happening at the time. He said he did it in response to what he said were paid leftist tweet, but he started this right around the same time that all these accounts started popping up. But he had been on Twitter before. This is just when he started doing the retweet bomb.
I love that this guy calls himself Cyber Rambo. It is just, it is, if you wanted to, it's too on the nose, honestly. Like, this is all so ridiculous to begin with. And then this guy calls himself Cyber Rambo. Igor, thank you so much for joining us. I want to make sure, is there anything else from what you've discovered or any follow-ups you're working on that you can that you'd like to add? Any additional things that we might have touched on this campaign or on the Bolivia coup in general?
No, I just think it would be worth it for people to pay attention to what's going on in Bolivia, because a lot of what's going on in Bolivia is fully supported by our government, and it's a really scary place that they're going.
Igor Derysh of Salon, politics writer at Salon. I knew how to say your last name. I was in the middle of pulling up the page that had all your information. Where can people find you online so they can read your latest work?
Yeah, I'm Igor Derysh on Salon. I'm Igor Derysh on Twitter. Those are the two main places you can find me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care.
You too.
All right, folks. Let's do some. Let's go to the second half of the show. That's. Oh boy, it looks like we're getting hit by a bot campaign right now. Actually, this is hilarious. All right, let me pull up. We got in the comments here on both Periscope and YouTube. Seems like there's a bunch of people trying to convince me that it is indeed actually not a coup. Very interesting. All right, so patreon.com/MattBinder. That's how you could support this show. We will be covering the Bolivia coup much more as we obviously get to those elections. We'll see what happens with Jean Áñez. I'm going to reach out to Janice Daza again. Hopefully she'll come back on this show because I want to ask her what happened. What you said was going to happen didn't happen, and what I said was going to happen is what's happening. And I don't understand why this is not. I get why we're not seeing this on CNN and MSNBC. They don't care about foreign policy. And I mean, in foreign, what's happening around the world outside of the United States to begin with. But I don't understand in this world where we're currently obsessed with Russian disinformation and Iran and China running their own disinformation campaigns, and you see Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Twitter and all these big tech companies come out and report whenever they find these coordinated influence campaigns. Why are we not seeing anything on this coordinated campaign in Bolivia? From the tech angle. Again, I get the politics angle. U.S. media doesn't care about this. It's sad but true. But from the tech angle, where they don't look at it as a politics issue, so it doesn't matter where it's coming from, it's simply companies in the U.S. failing to properly protect their platforms. Why is this not a bigger thing? I don't get it. It's stunning to me. This is a story, and it's a big one. From the tech angle, at the very least. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Support this show. I only ask for $5 a month. You can give more. I'll probably end up creating higher tiers very soon. I want to really thank the people who have joined in the past few months, and then also all those over the past month, I should say, and all the people who've stuck with this show throughout. And I would like to read their names to thank them right now. The people who make this show possible: Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew C, Andrew H, Angela, Ari R, Ben, Benji, Bobby M, Brosnan, Champagne Kami, Christine H, Colin R, Connor R, Cracker Barrel, Cyber Snowstorm, Dan K, Dan M, Dank Huger, Dave K, David Z, Doug H, Dragon Slayer, Eugene B, Fraz K, FTW All Day, George A, Greg D, Grim, Ian Curtis J, Igor D, Jack D, Jameson Test, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeremy M, John B, John S, Jonathan B, Jonathan L, Joseph R, Joyce M, Justin S, Katie S, Kaushal, Laputin Machine, Lisa D, Lisa H, Mariah, Mark S, Matt Z, Max W, User Me, Melissa M, Mitch V, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Danks, Nicole A, Namde Net, Null Style, O Death, Penelope D, Qster, Ryan, Scott R, Sean H, Stephen R, Stephen S, Steve A, Struggle Session, TM, Tamney G, Terrence R, Thaddeus A, This Is Not Pizza, Tina M, Todd K, Tom M, Why That Thai Guy, Utopian, Zachary K, and last but certainly not least, Zoe G. Folks, if you are in Brooklyn, I will be live at the Michael Brooks Show tomorrow at the Bell House. I believe, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there are just a few tickets left. Some might be sold out, so might only be certain tier of tickets left. But get your tickets if you live in Brooklyn or in Queens or in Manhattan or in the Bronx or in Staten Island, or if you want to drive there from out of state. Tomorrow at the Bell House in Brooklyn, I will be a guest on the live Michael Brooks Show. Check my Twitter. I'll have something retweeted so you can ASAP, so you can buy your tickets. You could also support this show by going to youtube.com/Matt Binder. Subscribe. If you are in there and want to give me a one-off donation, you can do that via a super chat in the feed on the live stream right now. What else? What else can you do for me? Leave an iTunes review. Leave a Google Play review. If you haven't yet, really just takes 5 seconds. Go to the Google Play Store. Go to the iTunes Store. Leave a little written review. It actually helps promote the show. Tell your favorite podcaster, your favorite YouTuber, your favorite Twitch streamer, your favorite leftist personality, your favorite right-wing personality, your favorite internet influencer. Can't believe I'm going to use that word. But it fits. Tell them that you want to hear Matt Binder on their show. You want them as a guest. You want me as a fill-in host, like I recently did for Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. I see you, Renee. Renee in the chat, dropping some super chats. Tell people you want to see me on their show. I'll get the word out. You'll get the word out. Tell your friends, your family, your acquaintances, your enemies that about the show. And yeah, at Matt Binder on Twitter. I have been covering. You guys are getting so much content this week. I jumped on a 2+ hour live stream at 12 a.m. on Monday night to talk about the Iowa caucus. I'm doing the show right now on the Bolivia bots. Tomorrow I'm doing the Michael Brooks Show live at the Bell House. There is a debate tomorrow at the same time. I'm sure we'll be talking about the debate a little bit at the Michael Brooks Show, but obviously during a live show it'll be hard to watch the entire debate. So what I'm going to do, this is the plan right now, and I'll keep you guys updated. Follow me on Twitter. If you're a Patreon subscriber, I'll put the information in there. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you should also be in the Discord channel where I'll tell you this, give you up-to-the-minute information about the show's plans. The current plan is I do the Michael Brooks Show. It's a great show. Get home late, obviously, because it's a live show at the Bell House. My goal is to watch a replay on my DVR of the debate so I can see everything. And I am currently planning to do a debate rundown like I've done for every other debate so far. But instead of right after the debate, because again, I will not have watched it after doing the Michael Brooks Show, I will be doing it Saturday night. That's the current plan. So I'm giving you guys so much content this week. I forgot to tell you, I released a YouTube-only episode. It's not a full episode because I'm giving all long-form episodes go up as the podcast on doompod.com, which gets disseminated through iTunes, Google Play, etc. But I will be doing short YouTube-specific clips like your favorite YouTubers do, breaking down specific issues that, I don't always get to via the weekly long-form show. Because can only really cover one or two topics in an interview because we really get into it with the guest on the show, the live stream. All right, I think I've given you guys a whole breakdown of what's going on. Oh yeah, the last episode of the YouTube, the YouTube only content, I broke down Dave Rubin misunderstanding that the Bernie Sanders campaign is saving money. If you don't understand what I'm saying, go watch the clip, youtube.com/MattBinder. All right, we will now go into the Patreon only half of the show, patreon.com/MattBinder. For everyone else, see you all next time on Doomed. All right, we're back. This is something else. All these bots in the feed. All right, well, let's get. What's this? Let me get to the super chats first, because they're honestly extremely important. Because I truly appreciate the support. I understand people, don't always have money, and if you do, I'm sure a lot of my viewers aren't flush with cash. So to be able to financially support this show in any way, shape, or form, it means a lot to me because you're basically saying that this show is important to you. Renee. Evo was prepping Adriana to succeed him through her father, though her father was blocked from running. Renee, Adriana is one of the young up and coming leaders from Morales' party, who basically is getting a lot of shit because she was supposed to succeed Morales as not like they weren't going to just install her, but she was going to be who the party pushed as their next candidate in the next elections. And Renee, I know, was working to get her on this show, which I would absolutely love. And I know it would also have been a episode done in partnership with Montserrat Nicholas, who was she was the fantastic guest I had on in the Chile episode, and I would love to do that with her. So let's get back on that, Renee. If you could still coordinate that. Tico Todd with the super chat. We appreciate your coverage of Latin America, Matt. Gracias. I appreciate you appreciating that. Thank you, Todd. I'm really thankful for your kind words. Grateful. What's this about Pac-Man, Renee? Pac-Man was calling this a coup early on as well? I mean, he was saying it was not a coup early on as well? What was up, David Pac-Man? Come on. Someone is tweeting at me who... A Juan Pablo V on Twitter. I remember this guy tweeting at me during the Janice Daza episode I did. This seems to be a real person. Hello, I said back then that it wasn't a coup, and I'm still here and still say it wasn't a coup. I'm Bolivian, by the way. I mean, we already got into this the last episode around, but when the military gets involved and says that this person should step down, and then we now have uncovered all the different connections that some of these Bolivian military leaders who told Morales to step down, all the different connections that they had with the United States, Specifically, some of them had come to the U.S. for training. I think it's fair to say that it's a coup, because it is a coup, because a right-wing dictatorship was installed. Someone who came in and unelected and said, "I'm bringing God into the White House, into the presidential palace." A Christian fundamentalist, with a fascist's backing. I mean, it who promised that she was just going to oversee fair elections and not run, and now she's running. And then Juan also says that Mas is running. Evo himself picked the candidate. He also says that a lot of Bolivians migrated from Facebook to Twitter to make themselves heard. Also, U.S. military vets, it seems, made their way from Facebook to Twitter to make themselves heard through a coordinated bot campaign. This now, listen, you want to tell me as a Bolivian, and I respect your opinion, obviously, as a human being who is from Bolivia. Obviously, this is something that is very meaningful to you as someone directly affected by this. But also, I mean, you could be a right-winger who supports this to begin with. I don't know what your politics is, Juan, on Twitter. But you're basically saying that Juan's final tweet is what's disturbing to me. The Sankara thing was a tragedy. The victims will receive financial support by the Áñez government and will seek justice in international courts if they want to. Since Sankara, there were no more incidents like it. Mas is overseeing the election, so they have tools to make it fair. The way you're just writing off the fact that Áñez empowered the military to literally mow down a couple dozen people to death is disturbing, to say the least. Financial support from the Áñez government, while nice, isn't going to bring back those dead people. A tragedy to me is something that, an earthquake is a tragedy. Empowering your military to use lethal force on your citizens seems avoidable to me. And we know who were killed here. This is the poor of Bolivia, the peasants. So you saying they'll seek justice in international courts if they want to is the equivalent I'm trying to think of the equivalent, honestly. It would be like, and this is how over the top it is to what you said. I want to really stress, that's why I'm now going to compare this. It would be like me when Warner Brothers shut down my stream via a fraudulent copyright strike that YouTube later reversed. It would be like me saying, I'm going to now take Warner Brothers to court. It's never going to happen because I can't afford to take Warner Brothers to court. Just like, how are the poorest of the poor in Bolivia going to have the resources to take this to international court? I'm sure they don't have the money. I'm sure they don't have the time. Where they're gonna take off from their jobs, from their work. What's gonna happen is that the Áñez administration is gonna throw them a bone. And they will have no recourse, whether the money is enough or not. They're going to have no recourse in terms of seeking further punishment for the people involved with the death of their family members. I mean, come on. It's a little bit... You want to argue with me whether it's a coup or not? I think you're wrong, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. And I think the facts bear out that you're wrong. But that's an opinion. Fine. But the idea that you would just, you know, brush away these deaths as just a tragedy, but at least they're going to receive financial support, and if they want to, they could seek justice in the international court. I mean, come on. It's like me. It's like me going after Elon Musk. If he called me a piece of shit and defamed my name like he did the diver in the UK, and that guy is someone who obviously had the means to go after Elon Musk. Come on, man. A-Dub forever. Bernie lost in Iowa. Thoughts? Now, I know A-Dub forever is a longtime follower of mine on Twitter. I know he's more of a centrist guy. So I know he's trying to get under my skin here. He's trying to troll me a little bit. But Bernie won. I don't know what you're talking about. Bernie lost Iowa? Bernie won Iowa. What are you talking about? Bernie won Iowa. I mean, I'll tell you, if you don't believe that Bernie won Iowa, I'll tell you what the absolute most indicative of Bernie winning Iowa is. The most indicative data point you can get about Bernie winning Iowa. And that's the fact that 538's predictions now believe that Bernie Sanders is the best bet to actually become the nominee. They currently predict he's the highest claim to pretty much winning every primary left. Does it mean he's going to win every primary left? No. He's probably not gonna sweep 49 states. But the fact that they believe he now has the momentum here, and we shit on 538 for getting things wrong. But what happens is their predictions are basically based on data, and it turns out, when they said that Hillary had something like 80% of the chance of winning the election, I mean, it's true from the polls. But they also calculated that Trump had a 15% chance. And what ended up happening is that 15% chance ended up coming to fruition. I mean, I think it's right to shit on them when they get it so wrong. But the Bernie model is pretty reserved and still puts him ahead. So, I don't know what else to say about that. Bernie won, though. Oh yeah, there's those CNN town halls going on now. I forgot all about that. Oh wait, more super chats. Let me get to those first. Don't want to leave those people hanging. Lil Video Main. If Sanders wins, should he focus on electoral reform, electoral college, gerrymandering? Oh, of course. Of course. We should get rid of electoral college. It is an absolute there's an absolute it shouldn't be. It's that simple. And gerrymandering, obviously. I mean, this is something that even gerrymandering is even an issue that probably the most centrist, center-left Dem, the most moderate Dem would look into. That's an easy win. But electoral college needs to be abolished. There's no reason for it. And the caucus situation with state delegates should be thrown out too. Renee says, nothing says democracy like ethnocide. Right. Man, people who hate Bernie are really pissed at Nate Silver for those predictions. Really funny. What's this? Are there new reports about? I'm obviously I need to take a look. Did Iowa results come out or something? What's going on here? Iowa, they were Iowa results. Oh shit. They dropped all the results. And they got Buttigieg leading, but there are people who are saying the results are still wrong. Wow, there is... This gotta be fixed. This is ridiculous. The results are wrong. The Sanders campaign has to bring this up. The Sanders campaign can't let this slide. All right, let me get some more comments here. Salami Mommy says Bernie won Iowa. Absolutely. Renee says basically the farmers didn't want people like Janine Áñez winning. And Buenora says I got a lot of excited disagreement that Bolivia was not a coup from those sorts of leftists who only seem to pop up to denounce fellow leftists as repressors. There are reasons to do so. Leftists should denounce left leaders' wrongs, but when it's a right coup situation, clearly it's time to pick a side, fascist takeover, or a government that does wrongs. Right. Oh, Zoe's joking. Your partnership with the Coca-Cola Corporation is over. Grim says Pepsi is better for that lemon zest. Yeah, I got the Pepsi with me right now. I'm really wanting to dig into this Iowa stuff, so I'm going to have to do this after we end the show. And Bernardo says, I had to find Bolivian left discussion to get away from that sort of view to liberate Bol from Mas into the hands of presumably notable rightists who say a few nice things about democracy and then quickly become who you think they are. Renee says, now it's a revolution to stop the coup whilst there's campaigning going on. Renee says, my ex-girlfriend's brother is a Mas troll now. Renee says, Evo burnt the rainforest, right? Totally not the landowners wanting farmland. Actually indigenous spiritual beliefs. Business Goose says, still a coup. Little Video Main with a super chat. Don't you think Pete will sink in New Hampshire? Should we be happy because Biden's the only real opponent and he crashed? Yes, if someone was going to do good in New Hampshire, I'm glad it was Pete so Biden would crash. But you can't let him pretend he won because it's not true. Because there are errors that are being pointed out, and not by randoms online. They're legit data people. This guy Daniel, editor at the Appeal, has been diving into the data, and he's been tweeting how the stuff is wrong and things haven't been fixed. It's why would you release these after the they're trying to, I mean, this is ridiculous. And they broke it with Pete during the CNN town hall so he could gloat. Oh, the Sanders campaign's going at it. They just released a press release. Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign on Thursday celebrated winning the popular vote in the first and second round of Iowa caucus and released publicly discrepancies in the state delegate equivalent data it submitted to the Iowa party. They're claiming they have a state delegate lead as well. And NBC News is doing the responsible thing here. NBC News said they are not declaring a winner, even though the Iowa Dem Party is reporting 100% of the vote. There are definitely some inaccuracies in the data. Thank you, NBC, for doing the right thing. It is journalistic malpractice that CNN used inaccurate data. Everyone knows there has been talked about nonstop to get a TV moment with Buttigieg to say, hey, all the results are in and you're still in the lead. It is journalistic malpractice. But MSNBC apparently is reporting it as fact. Oh my God. That's... I'm really fucking pissed. And I hope they need to... Something needs to be done here. They can't just... Hold on, I'm reading some... They're not listing certain caucuses too. Some are still missing. All right. I don't know, man. We'll find out. We'll find out. Let's finish up the some of these comments here. Rad Dad says, if Iowa was a South American country, we would have staged a coup by now. Yeah. Right. Zoe, not regular Zoe. Zoe 6942069. Obviously, lots of numbers. Very real person. Bolivia, friends from everywhere. There was no coup. Oh, okay, I think they're joking here. There was a peaceful movement by the people of Bolivia repeating the to have Evo and his corrupt government resign. Right, right. Very funny. Thank you, Zoe, on Periscope. Wesley says, Grim, we're stuck in the scarcity bubble. If you don't learn how currency is created and destroyed, look up. Okay. MMT and Marxism. Grim says, Viva Antifa, down with the Nazi coup in Bolivia. Oh, wait, is that Zoe 6942069 joking? As a woman of color, I couldn't be happier than a woman of color leads our beautiful country. This is a true democracy. It's not a coup. Bad Zoe, I'm the good one. Said Zoe 694. I don't even know if this is a troll. I can't tell. This show is Russian meddling in our democratic election. Okay, they're a troll. They're a troll now. And Buenora says, arrests of Mas and left leaders continue. Unbelievable. Bot Zoe says, the OAS is the most trustworthy organization in South America. I love my continent, but it's full of dirty socialists. Lil Video Man with another super chat. If you did Bernie Journey, where would you go? Well, right now, New Hampshire. He needs the big win in New Hampshire. After that, I would go to South Carolina. I think Nevada is going to be handled by people who know how to game out the caucuses. Just like, and it's also further, it's on the West Coast. You do a real trip there. On the West Coast, but on the West. So I would go to New Hampshire. And then I would go to South Carolina. Grim says, Viva Antifa, down with the Nazi coup in Bolivia. JP on Periscope, Bolivian here. It wasn't a coup. Zoe 6942, bot Zoe again. I was born in the slums of Santa Cruz. My parents had only 2 houses. I'm a true rags to riches. Okay. Totally joking. Thank you, Zoe. And Zoe, a regular Zoe, saying, that one ain't me. That's not me. All right. I have no idea what's going on. Bot Zoe says, my parents weren't slumlords. They were slum gods. We made this place what it is. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Zoe says it's not. Bot Zoe says it's not because my full name is Zoe Bamis that my ancestors were Nazis. Okay. Renee, I'm not gonna do Collins right now. I know, buddy. We'll do another one, okay? Bot Zoe, when I bring my hero Janice back on the show. Elon Musk is a national hero. Chile will know the taste of true democracy again, just like in 1973. Oh my God, this guy, girl, person is too much. Tom says left is best. Lord Ariane says, so Bernard Sanders is the presumptive nominee already? Well, we'll see. Wesley says, we want more Binder. Yeah, thank you. Oh, boy. Let's keep going through these comments here. Renee says, now that was a tragedy, Warner Brothers, with my live stream issue, right? Renee says the idea behind the Agnes strategy, ideology, is to remove voice from the Plains indigenous groups. Bot Zoe says, Buttigieg won Iowa fair and square, just like Guaido is the rightful owner of Venezuela. Lord Ariane says, Bernie won on votes and will get the delegates. Wesley says, 538 also said there is a 23% chance no one becomes the Dem nominee on this recent data. I think Silver is having a brain aneurysm. Well, 23% chance no one becomes the Dem nominee means contested convention. Doesn't mean we just don't have a nominee. Lord Arian says, Pete the Rat. Trampanzee says, you won't be able to abolish electoral college. Too many Republicans depend on it. Rad Dad says, still 5 precincts unreported and multiple errors not fixed. And when Buenora says, Iowa Dem Party released 100% of results but did not include any corrections of blatant errors. AP and NBC have both said there are errors in the data. Mr. Steiner says, this looks like a hostage video. Oh, me? I'll get a background. Grim says, we got a rat problem. Zoe says, I'm not a troll, I'm a Patreon member. Oh, well, thank you, right-wing coup supporting Patreon member. She also says, hell yeah, I'm too much. Get ready for Heal Zoe, you socialist rats. All right, folks. Renee says, Pete Guaido judge. Zoe says, this just in, Juan Guaido just declared himself winner of the Iowa caucus. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure to be with you guys here on Doomed. A lot of content this week. Don't forget. A lot of content. And gonna find out what's going on with Iowa. And you'll hear from me more over the weekend. See you all next time on Doomed.